I think people will find it quite fascinating because it is so different, and especially from a woman's point of view, the experiences that I had.
We lived our lives so close together that in many respects I lived my life through Des.
I think the great thing about this book, there's so many untold stories in it. You know, there's a lot of articles about racing, a lot of stuff written at the time, but Alan is telling it like it is.
It's stories. It's not so much, this is my racing career and this is what I did and this is what I won. Each chapter is actually more a story about what happened around a circumstance. My father was a motorcycle racer, very successful South African champion, and I guess he didn't have any boys, 2 girls, and decided that to give us a shot at driving. And I was 5 years old and we drove micro-midget race cars in South Africa. I won a Formula 1 race, but in the British Aurora Championship. It wasn't a Grand Prix. And I drove one Grand Prix in South Africa, but they then took the points away from the race. But I didn't score any points in it. So I didn't really score any points in Grand Prix, if that's Formula 1 Grand Prix, as opposed to the British Aurora Championship. I scored a lot of points in.
Well, I was back in the late 90s, I was flying 2 or 3 trips a week, and I was averaging about I did 1 million miles in 5 years. And being American, flying through Chicago, I was always delayed. So I just pulled out the laptop and I worked. So it took a long time, and then I got involved building Miller Motorsports Park, and everything stopped for 5 years. And then Alan de Cadenet saw me at the hill climb, and he asked me about the book, and I said, "Oh, Alan, one day I'll get it done." He said, "Get your ass into gear and get it published." And that really is what happened. It's exactly what happened. So then we put a lot of effort into it over the last year. I've known Andrew for years, and I asked him to review it as a professional journalist and then to edit it. And he found Veloce, made the association with Veloce, and the book's now coming out.
One of the other things I think is really interesting is the lack of women in motorsport. It is extraordinary. When you go back and look in history, at Le Mans, I think in 1935 or 1936, the MG company ran about 6 lady racing drivers. There were more famous lady racing drivers before World War II than there are now, and I find that absolutely extraordinary. I don't know what the female sex is doing. They should be out there racing. And just now it started, Indianapolis in particular, in the 500, I think there's 4 or 5 drivers going to be competing this coming year. And of course, Des tells some very interesting stories about trying to race in the Indy 500 and didn't quite make it. And there was a bit of subterfuge going on for various personality reasons, which are all in the book and make it such a fascinating read. And that's just one of the instances.
Well, in those days, I didn't really see myself as a woman as such, because I only raced against men. So they were all sort of my peers. I used to remember racing against the guys, and they were all my best friends until I beat them. And then they wouldn't really even talk to me. So it became quite difficult. Having teammates, sometimes you have a teammate in a team, and they wouldn't help me at all, give me any sort of assistance, because just in case I went quicker than they did. So there was a lot of male ego in that time. But also it was difficult with sponsors.
We lived our lives so close together that in many respects I lived my life through Des. I'll be honest about that. So in some respects it's my autobiography, because everything that I was trying to do was through her. So it's not just telling the story of her, it's telling the story of lives that are totally intertwined with racing, but not in the Michael Schumacher, not in the the Damon Hill, the Lewis Hamilton, I'm an immediate champion, or the hero. It's the people who didn't get there, but many of whom had equal talent and just didn't have the opportunity, or something went wrong, or they got into the wrong car at the wrong time.
I think the great thing about this book, there's so many untold stories in it. There's a lot of articles about racing, a lot of stuff written at the time, but Alan is telling it like it is, things that I, as a journalist following Des's career, never knew about, and most extraordinary situations.
Wow, yes. 135 cars. It's probably about 138 by now, but anyway, it goes up every year with Goodwood. Favorite cars, I have to say that, you have favorite cars because you won races in them. And to win races, you love your car, you know what I mean? It's just like, wow, this is the greatest thing could happen to you. So I think, the Wolf Formula One car was a favorite of mine. The Decadene Le Mans car, because I won 2 World Championship races in that. One of my most favorite cars, the love of my life, if you want to call it, was the Porsche 956. I finished 7th at Le Mans in that car, but I remember having a few incidents on the track and getting away with it and saying, wow, that wouldn't have happened in any other car. It was very forgiving, the car, but it was also very fast. Really, I just do historic events, and mainly Goodwood. On occasion, I do other historic events in America. But Goodwood's sort of my focus. We're almost becoming so competitive in the past. Goodwood gives me a little bit of relaxation and fun racing, because the cars are so phenomenal. I mean, I never knew much about historic cars until I started racing at Goodwood. And it's such an extraordinary event, but everybody drives flat out just as if they were all 18 years old. And so we still have hard racing, but a lot of fun. This year's event's going to be a lot of fun because I'm probably going to drive in 3 events. I already have a Jaguar E-Type that I'm going to be racing in one of the events. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun because with the book coming out, it'll be a little bit more interesting for the spectators and that type of thing, to see perhaps some of my past history and what I do at Goodwood now. Well, I think Lord March, it was really important for him to write a foreword because he almost, let's say, regenerated my career. I'd stopped racing, and then he invited me 10 years ago to come to Goodwood, and I've been going every year ever since. And I think he's just sort of given me another, I think it's called a tank of gas. Derek Bell, what an extraordinary winner of Le Mans 5 times, what an extraordinary person. And I raced against Derek a lot, and I just felt that I wanted somebody to say how they felt from maybe a not so chauvinistic point of view. It was, a peer that I've raced against, and what he thought of me as a driver.
There's lots of great Le Mans stories in this book, particularly to do with Alan Decadene, and of course Des had a huge crash at Le Mans, and that's all described in minute detail, and well, pretty lucky to survive that, but also had great runs in the World Sports Car Championship. Finally, can I say, I first saw Des at the South African Grand Prix a long time ago when she was racing in Formula V, and her name wasn't even Wilson, and it was Randall. And I said to somebody, there's a girl in that car, she's bloody quick, isn't she? So, oh, that's Desiré Randall. She's quick. And I've followed her career ever since. And as her husband said a little earlier, she could have been a midfield runner. She could have even won a Grand Prix. This is the quickest woman that has ever sat in a racing car, and there is no question, a doubt about that.